after we go ahead and put things onto our faders, it's time to think about putting things onto our buttons. So what do we put on our buttons and how do we choose what to put on it? Well, pretty much anything we want to control that we don't put on a fader, we put on a button. And the reason why, just to bring Onyx back over here and show you the screen again, is that buttons are great because, well, faders, you're only going to have so many faders, right? And I like to pretty much do everything I've got on a fader to be an actual physical, real, in life I can touch it fader, okay? While a lot of consoles offer something like Onyx does here with on-screen faders, I just don't find the need for it most of the time. I would rather have, instead of 10 on-screen faders here, I would rather have 100 on-screen buttons. And buttons are awesome. Why are buttons awesome? Well, in the early days, just to give a quick story, I used to program on consoles all the time, and a lot of consoles have 10 faders, right? Pretty much an average console from a lot of manufacturers out there may have anywhere between 5 and 12 playback faders and no buttons, okay? And that's really limiting if you start storing things on those faders that you want to play back during your show. You run out of steam, you run out of space really quick. So what's person to do? Well, if you've got physical buttons, that's the next best thing, because you can put anything on that button that you don't need a variable control over. Like at the top of my screen here are all my positions, and they're pairs of positions with 2 cues each on them. Okay, and these allow me to quickly and easily get a new position on the stage, and I don't need variable control of these. So a button is perfect and saves my valuable faders. Not only that, but like I mentioned, a lot of consoles don't have physical buttons, but guess what? Just like Onyx here, I can supplement, or instead of having physical buttons, have 100 on-screen buttons in just a little bit of space. And most lighting consoles have a touch screen, or if you're using a PC-based solution, you can get a touch screen with a PC, or maybe use TouchOSC on a tablet to get that button control. So what do you put on these buttons? Well, everything else, right? So if I'm laying things out for on-the-fly lighting, for this, it means literally positions, then I've got all these different colors. Then I've got some colors broken down where I'm able to get different lights, different colors, specifically. Like here, I just fired something that brought my front light to cyan while everything else is magenta. Then I've got color combinations. We'll go back to my good friend Blue Violet here. More color combinations, ones where they're half white. Then I've got gobos. Who doesn't want to put some gobos in some lights, right? And I can go on and on from there. I can add in prisms. I can add in different effects if I've run out of room on faders, etc., etc., etc. But the point is, just trying to make it simple on you here. The more buttons, especially if you're running lights live and on the fly, and it's not a totally pre-recorded set, then having more buttons is pretty much always better. In fact, in our next video, we're going to talk about quick, because I did these last two, this buttons and faders, basically about, if you're going to run things on the fly, which I got to tell you, in my professional experience, has been the way that most shows get programmed. Oftentimes, as a professional, oftentimes for, other types of show, if you're lighting a band or a theater or your church, you may want to use a different style of programming. And we're going to talk about that in the next video. But before I say hasta la vista, I just want to remind you guys of our Patreon. It's a great way to support what we're doing here on Learn Stage Lighting, and we just started it. So go ahead, check it out. You can support us for as low as $3, and starting at $10, there's some better options. But either way, you're supporting this thing. You'll help choose the content that we build in the future, and I can't wait to hear from you over there. Tomorrow, like I said, we're going to talk about some different methods of programming, some different ways to lay things out, and I hope you'll join me. See you there.